What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers. Unfortunately, today, we're missing our number 9, our striker, the guy who puts in all the goals. You know, maybe he's even a 10. Maybe he's a 10. What is Ari Lillienwall is the question that I pose to the audience today. But Ari is gone. He's on injury reserve. He's not available. So I brought in the Danny Musovski. And that is Jeremiah Oshan. Jeremiah, how are you doing? How many goal contributions are we going to have today? That's the real question.
16.
Well, that's good enough for me. I mean, I think if we're talking numbers, you know, being compared to Danny Musovski is not too bad as a backup. But
I agree.
Yeah. Before we get into that, though, before we talk about a lot today, we've got a lot on our plate. We've got some Obed Vargas 22 under 22 talk. Going to dive a little bit into the Sounders injuries, how that's going to affect the playoffs, talk about the playoffs, and if the Sounders could potentially win MLS Cup. Is this still something we're believing? Talk about the Sounders Circle of Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends. Very confusing name, but we'll talk about that. There's 3 finalists for this year. And then Sounders Timbers, and closing it out with a little FIFA slander, which honestly is always my favorite thing to do. But
always
before
welcome.
we do that, Jeremiah, don't jump in yet. Before we do that, we've got to promote Sounder at Heart, because Lobbing Scorchers is a part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. And if you want to become a member of the best independent soccer coverage anywhere in the entire world, you're going to want to go to sounderatheart.com/LS, scroll down to subscribe and support. You'll get 30 days completely free. And if you sign up through our link, you help support us and you help us support Jeremiah in buying his vacation home. He needs a vacation home, folks. He works too hard. So do that. Also subscribe, like the video. All of our audio only versions of our live streams are also available for subscribers to Sounder at Heart. And Ari normally does all this at the top, so I feel like I'm rambling, but shout out to our sponsors, Hacks and Ferments, Podium Menswear, Full Pull Wines, and My Data Removal. I think that's it. Follow us on Instagram. Okay, perfect. Wow. I think I killed that intro, Jeremiah.
Oh, you crushed it.
Thank you. I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. I feel so lost without you, Ari. But let's jump into the thing that I'm most excited to talk about today, honestly. It's a man who many have said could go for as large as $85 billion on the transfer market, and that is Obed
Unlimited.
Vargas, right? First of all, he's away right now with the Mexico U20s. Is that correct? 21s? 22s? U20s.
Yeah. He just played. They just finished. They just tied Spain 2-2.
Okay.
Started. Yeah.
Well, there we go. Obed Vargas start playing in front of undoubtedly a very large audience of scouts.
Always.
And mainly scouts. There was probably not that many people in attendance other than families and scouts, but I think that is important. And the second most important thing is Major League Soccer's 22 under 22. It's a ranking, it's a list, it's a tier list perhaps of the best young players under 22 years old in the league. Do you know who's won it in the past? Jesus Ferreira, I think, had won it in the past. Is that correct? Or at least he was up there.
I think he's won it before. Charlie Davies has won it. I think Freddie Montero actually won it. DeAndre Yedlin, I believe, won it. It's I would say the U20, the winner, it used to be 24 under 24, and they reduced it to 22 under 22. But I think the number 1 spot has a pretty good record of success. So it's, it's not an insignificant, it doesn't mean a lot, but it's usually a pretty good barometer of quality.
Yeah. And so the votes are being cast as we speak. Some of the media members have shared their ballots. I believe Ari voted number 1 for Obed Vargas, which of course he did. Friggin' Homer. Like, come on.
Come on.
He's rigging this election, which we're okay with. I'm okay with rigging the election for Obed Vargas. But Tom Bogert, famously Tommy Scoops, friend of the show, he also had Obed Vargas at number 1. I think Matt Doyle probably has Obed Vargas at number 1.
He did, yes.
I don't know who else.
I mean, those are the only ones, those 3 I've seen.
Yeah.
And I think Obed is, I'm looking at last year's list. Obed was 7 last year. I thought that was a little low. It was lower than I think a lot of people expected him to be. The winner was Diego Gomez from Miami, and he ended up getting sold for a ton of money. Number 2 was Diego Luna. He's obviously gone on to have a pretty good year. Jack McGlynn was number 3. Brian Gutierrez was number 4. I don't need to recite the whole list, but these are all like pretty good players.
Yeah. So I guess what I wanted to bring up with this conversation was Ari has been bringing up that Obed Vargas this year specifically, he's evolving, he's changing, he's turning into a different type of player and animal. And I personally think that if you are going to point the finger at anyone in this league who deserves to win a title of the best player under 22 in the league, undoubtedly it would be Obed Vargas. And so it is going to be interesting to see what the national pundits think. And I think, like I've said, gauging by the types of voices that have voted so far and shared what they voted, it seems very likely that Obed is going to win that first place spot. And then I guess with that, my question with that is, does that add to his pedigree at all? And do we expect that to even move the needle in the slightest?
Maybe in the slightest. I mean, it would get some attention to him. I don't know that scouts, the people that are actually writing checks, care about the MLS 22 under 22. I think it's really more of a marketing exercise. It's SpawnCon. Let's be honest. That's really what the main point of this is that MLS can go into the marketplace and say, hey, we have this list coming out. You should sponsor it. I don't want to totally diminish it. There's a lot of people that put work into it and everything, but that's kind of the root of what this is. It's a piece of content that they can sell. That said, I'm looking at the list of the incomplete list of everyone who's won this thing, and it's good. I think the record of success from these teams is high. Once you get into 2013, 2010, Freddie Montero, great. I think that speaks to the state of MLS. But then Breck Shea and Darren Maddox were 11 and 12, not as good. But then you go Darlington Nagbe, DeAndre Yedlin, Fabian Castillo, Kyle Larin, Miguel Almiron, Alfonso Davies, Diego Rossi, Brendan Aronson, Ricardo Pepe, Jesus Ferreira, Alan Velasco. He did get sold for like $10 million last year, so whatever. And then Diego Gomez. This is, that's a really good hit rate. Almost all of these players were eventually sold for a lot of money. And I think that's really, that probably tells you something about what kind of price tag Obed has. Not necessarily because of this. It's more of a lagging indicator, I think. But it's a good sign. I mean, I think that it's not just an award that a bunch of scrubs are winning. It's a legitimate thing that, I'm sure he'll feel good about.
I think it's also another indication, in my opinion, that they've got to get this contract done with him. And I mean, if you win 22 under 22 and you still don't have a deal done, does that put any more pressure on the Sounders? Or just how much more? I don't think there's any more negotiating leverage that Obed Vargas could have at this point.
No, he has a lot of leverage right now.
Yeah, it seems almost entirely down to what the Sounders are willing to offer, which if you do put him on a U22 spot, it is a very specific number at its max. So I guess maybe we dive into that if there are any updates. If you have any, I haven't heard anything.
We talked a little bit about this on No Sarietes last Friday, and Nico Moreno, who your listeners obviously know quite well,
famous from Center Hard Kickoff or
Lobbing Scorchers. Yeah. He said that it seemed like there was some real interest in Obed at both PSV and Bruges in Belgium, and it's hard to know where the negotiations are between the Sounders and Obed. Obed himself has said that he feels like something's going to get done. I don't know. Maybe that's on the record. So I don't know how much you should read into that. He's not going to sit there and flame the Sounders and say screw you guys, I'm gonna ride this thing out. But I do think if he doesn't sign a new contract, early on in the offseason, I think the Sounders essentially have to go into sell him immediately mode. And I don't know if that's necessarily in his best interest. I also think that it does benefit him to sign a new contract, because then that sets a floor at his wherever he's going. So if he signs $1 million contract, which is basically the ceiling of what you can make as a U22, that sets a decent foundation for him to make salary demands. Right now he's on $180,000 or something like that. So it's that doesn't really do a lot for his negotiating position at teams, other than hoping there's a sort of a bidding war for him as a free. So I do think it's in everyone's best interest if he signs a new contract, and it gives the Sounders a little bit more leverage in terms of going out into the marketplace and finding the best deal they can for him, as opposed to just sort of finding the first deal, the first decent offer that they get. So, hopefully this thing gets worked out, and, fingers crossed.
I mean, it's a tough situation. Like I understand from an agent's perspective being like, oh, well, you want to go to Europe, like you could just walk away. You could just be on a free, you could just go to whatever. And I'll tell you what, a lot of bigger clubs are going to take a chance on a free transfer rather than spending $10 million, $9 million, whatever it comes down to the actual fee. And then, yeah, like, do you want to go play in Liga MX? Because I think that's probably where you're going to end up if you don't sign this long-term deal or a new deal or some sort of deal where the Sounders do kind of control your destiny. But I mean, I feel for Obed Vargas in the situation too, as being like, how do you even navigate that as a kid, basically? That's the difficult perils of soccer, but it is quite impressive to see his growth in the last 3 years into like where he is now. And I mean, I think me and Ari have been talking about it, and you've been talking about it for a very long time about just how insane this kid is going to be. And yeah, to potentially win 22 under 22, to potentially be moving to Europe or wherever for a multi-million-dollar transfer fee, that's incredible. And the price is going up, folks. The price is going up. He's also going to win the U20 World Cup. Why not? And that's that. The U.S. is doing pretty good as well in the U20 World Cup. I saw they won like 8-1 or something.
9-1, I believe. Yeah. And Reed did not play in that game, which I think was mainly a result. I would assume that he'll start in the next one.
Yeah. Let's hope. Please.
Yeah.
Play Reed. Play Obed, play Reed. Price is going up. That is my Obed Vargas discourse to start off the show. But I like he's got to win it, right? Like if anyone else wins it, does that feel like an upset to you?
Yeah, I mean it kind of does. I don't have the candidates off the top of my head. Well, let's look at
why not?
Ari wrote about this. I may as well look at who he's got on his list. Alex Freeman is a right back with Orlando City. He's got him basically number 2. I feel like there's a pretty big gap between Obed and him in terms of his, he's just done it for so long. I think that's really the thing that stands out with Obed. Idan Toklamati, he's the Charlotte FC guy who just sort of recently really jumped onto the scene. He's been on the team for a while, but only recently has really started to produce. So that would be a little bit of a surprise. Owethu Makanya, I don't know anything about this guy. And
East Coaster.
Right, exactly. Luca Bombino is I believe a left back at San Diego, and he's been pretty good. I feel like Obed is sort of heads and shit. Like it's almost like an obvious thing. Like I don't even think it would. Yes, it would be a huge upset. I think looking at this, at this top 5, Obed seems like clear and easily the number 1.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone else winning it. And frankly, if they do, I'm storming the headquarters of Major League Soccer for the body armor U22 under 22 presented by Target and Adidas. I will be taking to the streets, okay, to protest.
Do they really have 3 sponsors on this thing?
I don't know. I think last year there were 2.
Oh my God.
Let's see. I'm sure that there's a lot of sponsors on the.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was Body Armor for a while where it was like they kept
It's Body Armor last year. So
there we go. Okay. Presented by Body Armor Sports Drink. So it's the 22 under 22 presented by Body Armor Sports Drink. Apologies to Major League Soccer for not including your correct naming preference in there. But let's move on from the Body Armor presented by Body Armor 2020, 2020, whatever.
If Body Armor wants to come on and sponsor our read, then we would
love. I love coconut water hydration beverages. And I've always said that.
Get an official coconut water of the Center of Podcast Network.
Yeah. And speaking of people who maybe should have drank some more coconut water, let's talk about the 2 center back injuries for the Seattle Sounders this past weekend. We had 2 players go out in mere minutes apart from each other. I wasn't even in the press box. I wasn't in the press box for like 15 minutes. And 2 players went out. They scored a goal. I was just like, I don't even know what's going on, Jeremiah. It was insane. My low key this year, not MVP, but like really, really elevated their level, has been Alex Roldan. I have loved what I've seen from Alex Roldan this season. I'm a huge fan of his play and what he brings to this team, and I've been evangelizing him like the entire year. It really does suck that he picked up an injury, but what sucks even more is Yeimar also potentially picked up an injury. What do we know about these injuries? I know that maybe Alex isn't as bad as we thought, or maybe it was Yeimar's, but why don't you give us a little insight into those 2?
Yeah, so Alex apparently he kind of twisted his hip awkwardly, and so he's questionable for this week, but it sounds like it's not a muscle injury, so they're not worried about him missing more than just this week. That's good news, all things considered. He was not training today, but he was outside, so he's doing stuff. That's a good sign. Yeimar, I suppose it depends on your perspective on this. He's going to be out 4 weeks. That likely puts him in line to return for the playoffs, which would start in about 4 weeks. So, that's not great news. It's not disastrous news in that it wasn't a horrible tear. It was more of a strain is what we were told. But yeah, that's his 2nd injury this year. This is his 3rd injury since last year. So that's a growing concern, I'd say. They're all similar types of injuries. This one was a hamstring injury. And that's not, I think he had done his quad before, so maybe that's good. I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad news, but it's not great. It's not great. The good news, I suppose, is that Kim Ki-hee has been pretty good. He didn't necessarily look great against the Vancouver Whitecaps, but he has been pretty good overall. And the other one is Kalani Kosarienzi has been, I'd say, mostly good. He was, again, not great against the Whitecaps, but Kosarienzi, I think, matches up well against the Timbers, and so that's it. If that's the game he plays, I think we'd be okay with that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm definitely more concerned on the center back setup. I have not, frankly, been a fan of Kim Ki-hee this year. Like, I think he's had moments and flashes where he's absolutely come in and been a very serviceable and good center back, but I just think in large swaths he gets cut out a lot. And it's undeniable that Yeimar is one of the best center backs in the league. So it is hard when you do lose that and, you kind of fall down the depth chart, and Kim Ki-hee, he just doesn't give you that. That's just the truth. Jackson, here and there has had off games. I don't know, with all of the defensive lapses and errors, it does seem like kind of a challenge, especially as you're going into the playoffs where it's going to be gritty, man. It's going to be like we saw kind of the only way that they were able to win against Vancouver was go into offense sicko mode. Like they turned it on a whole nother level for 20 minutes and decided, yeah, we're actually going to be the greatest team to ever touch grass, ping around a bunch of passes, look insane. and score some really beautiful goals. It does help that Jordan Morris is coming back. He's looking more and more fit every game. I don't think his first few games have been amazing, but his passing is just insanely great. His vision is still there. Like, you clearly see what he has. And then even behind him, you have Danny Musovski, who can, do things here and there, Ferreira or whatever. So I'm super promised about the attack, but in a way, I feel so conflicted with these injuries now because it's a flip-flop of last year. I felt so confident about the defense going into the playoffs, and now I feel super confident about the offense, but not necessarily the defense.
Yeah, I would agree that is kind of a ironic twist to this season. Is, one of the things that last year a lot of people were expressing frustration with, especially early on, was all these 0-0, 1-1 kind of boring ties. And there was a kind of common refrain of, man, I would take one of the silly things you would hear every now and then is people would say, I'd take a 3-2 loss over a 0-0 tie. I always questioned the sanity of folks that would say that, but there were a lot more sane takes of saying, I'd take a 2-2 tie over a 0-0 tie. I think most of us would, probably all things being equal. That is really being put to the test. 5 times this year, the Sounders have tied a game where they've scored at least 2 goals. That's more than they had in similar situations the last 2 years combined, where they had 4 games like that. So they're scoring a lot more, but defensively they are undeniably just not as sharp as they were last year. And what's funny is that I know you're a big stat guy.
Huge stat guy,
yeah. Their expected goals against is actually right on par. It's a little higher than it was last year, but they're sort of like the underlying numbers say the defense has been pretty good this year. But this is one of those things where sometimes the underlying numbers don't always get it right exactly, right? And I think a good example of that was, the Brian White breakaway in this game, where by XG, it's a good chance, but not necessarily a great chance. But I think anytime you put Brian White in that position, you sort of expect it to be a goal. And so even though the XG isn't super high on that one, it feels worse than that. And they've given up a lot of chances, a lot like that. The Diego Rubio game, Diego Rubio, yeah. In the Austin game was very similar, where he basically just went one-on-one with the goalkeeper. And I swear it feels like they've given up a lot more chances like that this year than they gave up last year. So even if the XG is not quite as, it doesn't jump out as a huge problem, it just feels like teams are getting better chances.
I think undoubtedly the eye test is giving you what feels like mistakes. I think you can take, regardless of if I believe in these ridiculous fake numbers or not, what it does tell you is that they're making errors on shots and goals and chances that they weren't before. And
right,
there's something to that. Is it the formation change? Is it personnel? Is it all of that? That's honestly even harder to figure out because it is a very similar personnel setup. So
right.
Is it the personnel? I don't think so. I've seen Jackson Reagan play amazing. I've seen Yamer play amazing. I've seen them both play bad, but I saw that last season too. Is it the formation change? Yeah, but also that formation change is giving you the opportunity to watch soccer that doesn't make you want to pull your hair out. And so,
yeah, I think undeniably the Sounders have been a lot more fun this year, and and we've seen that consistently even in this post Leagues Cup slump, where they aren't getting the results that we want, but they are looking more dangerous. They are, they maybe aren't as clinical as we'd like them to be, but they have been creating chances and they've scored in every game. It's not like they've been getting, beat up. They got 6 goals in these 4 games, which isn't you're not going to celebrate with that kind of thing, but that's also not that's a perfectly acceptable goal total from any 4-game stretch, especially when 2 of them are on the road and 3 of them are against playoff teams.
Well, in that Austin game, you easily could have had more goals. There's been if I look at the last 3 weeks, absolutely, I think what Paul Rothrock said about the hangover, that's always true. I always expected that. That's if you look at what happens after people win midseason trophies, it's predictable. It catches up with you at some point. That's just the reality of it. But it's not like they have looked bad necessarily. They've
No, I
made
don't think they
mental
have.
lapses, but they've had so many opportunities stopped by the type of play where I like to reference it as like, you got to just tip your hat. Like, that's soccer.
Right.
Like Brad Stuver having the most out of his mind game of all time. What are you going to do about that? Nothing. Like, that might happen in the playoffs, and that might just be the end of it. That's what's great about the playoffs. But that result or that game, it was disappointing that they couldn't win, but I wasn't disappointed in the performance necessarily.
And I would say, along those same lines, the chance that Georgie Manungu gets at the end of that game where a ball, Kalani Kosarienzi floats a ball into the box, it doesn't get played by the goalkeeper, and it falls right to Georgie, and he just lashes it into the net. And this is a quote actually from something Brian Schmetzer said, is like, a few weeks ago that ricochets off the defender's knee and it hits the top of the net. And you just say, what a great chance. And in this one, it hits him like square in the knee and it bounces out. And then Christian Roldan hits a great volley off the rebound. It deflects off of another defender, and somehow Takioka gets his hand on it. And you go, oh, well, I guess this is how it goes sometimes. And this is the weirdness that the Sounders, I think if they get out of the game with a 3-2 win, if Georgie Manungu converts this golden opportunity, if you're going to give him that chance 10 times, he's probably going to score it 7. And you don't get it, and you kind of shrug your shoulders, and it's a tough one, but you kind of move on. And ultimately, I don't know, it's frustrating that they didn't get that win from a emotional perspective, but from a practical, standings perspective, they probably aren't going to finish 4th no matter what. Like, their chance to finish 4th, really, you got to go at least back to the Galaxy game. And when they didn't get those 3 points, that sort of made it tough for them to get back into that 4th spot, because at that point they lost control of their own destiny. And that's kind of going to be the way it goes. But if they win this game, they've almost secured 5th place at that point. And that's, probably the best you can do, even with that, even if they had won that game the other last week.
Yeah, like, it sucks, like, not getting home field advantage. I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about it. It's one of those things where I'm not going to sit here and dwell on something that's like, yeah, you know what? There is a world in which they don't win League's Cup and they are going to play this game in Miami, and Miami had won it, and like, they're hungover and the Sounders get points out of it, and then they take it to the Galaxy and get points out of it, and they get on this run and they keep going. Like, that's a reality that could exist, but I just like, it's not worth worrying so much about. And I said it on the last show, and I don't, at this point, like, the playoffs are awesome to me and I'm excited and I would love for the Sounders to win MLS Cup, but I don't know how much I care. It's kind of just like go out there and show really well and try and win it. But like, I don't think I'm going to be too distraught if this group ends the season with 1 trophy.
I definitely won't be too. Yeah, I definitely won't be distraught if they don't win another trophy this season. But I will say that this game against the Timbers kind of feel, I wouldn't say it's a must win it's definitely not a must win in any practical manner.
Yeah.
But if you want this to feel like a successful season, beating the Timbers at home and ending this unbelievably long streak of going winless against the Timbers at home and ending that's you got to win this game to really make it feel like a satisfying season. If you win this game, I feel like the rest of the season is almost gravy. I think you can argue it's a successful season, but successful and satisfying are not necessarily the same thing.
Absolutely. And we will talk more about satisfyingly beating that Timber ass right after these wonderful ads. We'll be right back. There is nothing quite like a match day in Seattle. The flags waving, the drums pounding, the crowd surging as the team takes the pitch at Lumen Field. You want to be there. I want to be there. So how do you get there? By visiting lobbingscorchers.com/tickets, you'll be taken directly to Ticketmaster, where you can buy tickets directly from the club themselves. You don't have to worry about a secondhand marketplace or any of that weirdness. Just tickets, super simple, right to your phone. lobbingscorchers.com/tickets. Welcome back to Lobbing Scorchers, the show with Jeremiah Oshan and Noah Reif. It's always been that way. Don't believe anyone else who's ever said that. Jeremiah, what are we going to do to them if they skipped our ads?
I believe there is. We are for sure able to track that.
Yeah.
And we will email you incessantly. We'll actually send you text messages and say you are taking money out of our mouths, and you now owe us this amount of money. We'll actually prorate the amount of money that you would have gotten us if you had listened to the ad like you were supposed to, and we will bill you for the difference.
Yeah, and I'm gonna send you a voice note of my stomach gurgling and crying out like you're taking food out of my mouth. But let's talk about taking food out of the mouths of good people. The Portland Timbers are good at doing that. They have been able to basically make every single Sounders Timbers games their Super Bowl. No matter what's going on in their season, they will find a way to embarrass the Sounders. They will find a way to come into Lumen Field, punch them in the mouth, and plant their flag and run around like they just won the World Cup. Because, in fact, that's kind of all that they're good at nowadays. But Jeremiah, let's talk Sounders Timbers. You alluded to this feeling like a must-win game. I feel the same way. Brian talked a little bit about in his presser after this Vancouver game that he was disappointed in the Cascadia Cup, and he kind of threw a little shade at us. He said, I don't think anyone's, I don't know why no one's bringing up that we lost Cascadia Cup. And frankly, Brian, I'm going to be honest with you. I forgot about it. You're right. I forgot about it. It didn't cross my mind. And it hasn't for a long time because, frankly, the Sounders haven't even been in it a lot in the last few years. And that feels frustrating. So for me, do they got to win this game? Maybe not on a table perspective, but you got to send a message. And there is a chance that the Sounders match up with the Timbers in the playoffs.
It is funny that the Cascadia Cup is sort of the secondary goal of it's like a byproduct of doing well in the league in general, but also it's like if you go 2-0 if the Sounders were to go 2-0 against the Timbers and not win the Cascadia Cup, I don't know that very many Sounders fans would care. Like the reality is that the Whitecaps are there to sort of like keep one of these two teams from claiming real bragging rights. But let's be honest, the Sounders Timbers part of this rivalry is the main event. It's the main thing that I think Sounders care about. It's for sure the main thing that Timbers fans care about. And finally beating the Timbers at home is really like, that's just a streak that has to end. It has to end. This is unbelievably long streak. I don't know what to say.
It really used to be such an important part of the season. It was like a selling point for Sounders tickets. Like the tickets were almost the most expensive against the Timbers always. Like it was nationally covered, and it was this huge event. And you had Copa 90 dropping documentaries. You had Lobbing Scorchers dropping documentaries. And now it kind of just feels like it's easier for us to kind of forget about it a little bit because we're like, oh, well, we're off winning trophies and you're being shit. And it's like, cool. But also, I feel a little embarrassed at what's transpired in the last few years.
It's a little embarrassing. The Sounders Timbers rivalry in general has been reasonably competitive. There was a stretch there where Gio Savarese really had Brian Schmetzer's number, and he kind of alluded to it.
That was the only I think that specifically kept him in that job.
Yeah. I mean, there was like a 3-year run where it just seemed like the Sounders could not figure that out. But aside from that relatively small window, it's been a very competitive rivalry, and the Sounders have actually won their fair share of games in Portland. And that's what makes this whole winless streak against the Timbers at home even more frustrating. And I don't really know what to make of that other than, there was a time where I think you could say the Timbers just get up more for this game, but there's been just some weird ones. Like last year, the Sounders seemed like they were going to win, and then they got this red card. I feel like the weirdest red card that maybe the Sounders have ever gotten, where Obed Vargas just waves his arm, sort of like punches at the air. The referee is nowhere near him, and he gives a second yellow. And he had been letting dissent go repeatedly throughout the game. And for some reason, he just feels like he has to send Obed Vargas off for dissent late in that game. And then there was a couple years ago, the Sounders were up 2-0. And then and Leo Chu, of course, rips off his jersey, gets a yellow card, and then gets a second yellow card early in the second half. Sounders play down a man and end up blowing a 2-0 lead. So it's like they're getting closer. They're getting closer, but they just can't quite close the deal. And they if they can finish with 11 men, which has been sort of a theme
Crash out
this
red
year,
card boys. Yep.
Yeah. That would be a good start.
It's such, like I am looking back and thinking about how there has been so many just stupid ass moments that have changed these games. Let's talk about stupid ass moments, or maybe favorite moments. I wanted to ask you what your favorite rivalry moment. Let me phrase this so I can clip this into an awesome little TikTok video.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your favorite rivalry moment between the Seattle Sounders and Portland Timbers?
All right, so I should have given this a little bit more thought than I have, but the one that jumps to mind first is definitely one of my favorites, and it was in 2017, I want to say, and Clint Dempsey was coming off the bench, and this is in Portland, and the crowd is chanting, "Fuck Dempsey, fuck." Can we say that on the show?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Or "fuck you, Dempsey," or something like that, right? Yeah. They're chanting. It's an F word, Dempsey, and they're chanting it as he comes into the game. Sounders were down 2-0 in this game. They grab a goal to go down 2-1, and then right basically at the death, Roman Torres of all people just floats in across. Clint Dempsey comes in and just heads it in, 2-2 game, and it's just like perfect. Like that was definitely like the port. I have to admit, there's way more great memories of this series for me in Portland. I went down there this year I took my daughter and my nephew, I think 9-year-old nephew, and my 12-year-old daughter, and we sat in the Sounders section, and they were just, their eyes were big, and they were so excited to just hear all the cussing and the language. That just for that part of it, it was not a relatively uneventful game, 1-1, but that part of it was another great memory of mine. The 6-2 win, which I did not go to in Portland, was a great one to watch on TV. But in 2014, I want to say, there were two great games in Portland. One of them was the 4-4 tie, where Clint Dempsey also gets a late equalizer in that one on a penalty, I believe. And they were down 4-2 in that game. They came back to get it to 4-4. That was a great one. And then later in the season, they won 4-2. And this was the game where Obafemi Martins had just amazing goal. Chad Barrett had a great goal. And it was just sort of this fun, festive atmosphere. And like I said, for whatever reason, all the fun games that the Sounders have been in Portland for some reason. I don't have a good explanation for that. But yeah, those are probably like my four best that I'll come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give two off the wall ones. That 4-4 game was pretty awesome. I was like a child, so it felt extra special and cool.
Sure.
I honestly, then this is going to be a little bit out of the box, but this season, Open Cup Timbers versus Tacoma Defiance. Okay. Now, this is super out of the box, and they didn't win. The Tacoma Defiance didn't win. But the idea and the atmosphere and the feeling of playing the Timbers with our second team and absolutely outclassing them. Should have won. Terrible refereeing. They got bailed out by a penalty in the end. Whatever happens, happens. But I mean, they were outclassed by a bunch of kids at Starfire in front of an awesome crowd. I mean, when Georgie Manungu was tearing it up out there, I mean, it was electric. It was so fun. The atmosphere was amazing. Like I think that it's so awesome that that was the peak for me, because it was like, how little respect can we give you? That's how little respect we can give you. We can roll out our second team and almost embarrass you. We almost embarrassed you. I think it's still embarrassing, frankly, the fact that it was that close and they were playing basically all of their starters.
It would have been a little weird if the Defiance had won at home before the Sounders had won at home against the Timbers. So like there is that would have been off, but I agree. That was an amazing game. That was as much fun at the Open Cup as I've had in a long time. And I should also mention the red card wedding, again, not a game that I was at, but it was for sure one of my favorite Sounders memories, just because as frustrating as it was, it made for such a great story. And it was one of those things you had to see to believe. And it was like this rivalry has some rich history. I think it's, there's been a lot of memorable moments in this thing. And hopefully the Sounders can finally get one on the right side this week.
That was going to be my second one, was the red card wedding. I mean, it's undeniably like the funniest possible, just content wise, like was insane. Like that added so much to the rivalry. And I do miss like a player like Clint Dempsey, who absolutely loved playing against the Timbers. I mean, that dude wanted to kill somebody on that field. There's so many players, that you can go through in the history of the rivalry that just Ozzie Alonso, man. I think that dude is like that guy was wanting to kill someone on that field every single time he played. And yeah, is Diego Chara still playing?
He is. He is still playing. Yeah.
I hope we get to see him. I hope we get to see him. Put him on. Start him. Don't be cowardly. Start him at Lumen. I think he's 40, but that's okay. Good for him.
I think he might actually be 40.
Yeah. Well, that's what I had for Timbers talk.
He's 39.
Okay, so yeah, that's basically round up,
Yeah.
We made 2 documentaries, but one about the best rivalry in American soccer, which I'll link below. You guys should go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's on our YouTube, where we went down to Portland, explored the city, went to the match this year. That was the match you were at and talking about. It was super fun. That's a great stadium, great atmosphere. So I hope that every single one of you come out and make it an even better atmosphere in Lumen, because let's be real, like what they can achieve, what they can reach as atmosphere will never top 70,000 people watching us beat Messi 3-0. But regardless, that's a whole other thing. But go watch those documentaries. And let's talk about this next topic here, which we could also make a documentary about if we get there, which is the Seattle Sounders. This may not be a must-win game, but they're about to hit the playoffs. Do we think that the Seattle Sounders actually have a chance of winning MLS Cup? There was a lot of talk early in the season that the Sounders were favorites for some pundits, or at least favorites to win the West. And as the season has shaken out, I think there's been a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And I want to see right now, 3 games left in the regular season. How are you feeling, Jeremiah? Do you think the Seattle Sounders are going to win the MLS Cup?
Well, do I think they're going to win the MLS Cup? I don't know. I would not necessarily say they are my favorites to win MLS Cup. Do I think they can win MLS Cup? Absolutely. I can talk myself into believing that they have a path to MLS Cup. And if honestly, if they can beat Miami, who is a flawed but very good team, I don't see why they can't go on a MLS Cup run. Let's look at, if we take the table as it is right now, they would play Minnesota United in the first round. I realize that Minnesota United seemingly has the Sounders number. They've won both of the games. Frankly, I did not think that they dramatically outplayed the Sounders in either one of those games. And I think that's a great first round matchup for the Sounders, frankly. I'll take that. I would take
over 3 games. Oh yeah.
Yeah, over 3 games, I will take that. And if they can't beat Minnesota, then what they weren't going to do, they weren't going to beat anybody else, you know? So look, I'll take that first meeting, and I think they can get past Minnesota. They get that one, and then they would presumably play the number 1 seed in the next round. The next round would be, the number 1 seed, it looks like it's going to be Vancouver or San Diego. Again, I'm not saying the Sounders are favorites against, they beat San Diego once, they tied Vancouver once, and they lost once, right? So these are not necessarily great matchups for the Sounders, but nothing I saw in any of those games makes me believe that they aren't capable of going on the road and beating those teams. So they could absolutely win that. And look, playing in the final, that would set up a Western Conference final, most likely against LAFC, although it could be someone else. You know, someone else could maybe upset them. And this is where finishing 5th does have some value, because because then you are at least in position where if someone else on the other side of the bracket gets upset, you are potentially hosting the Western Conference final. But let's assume it's LAFC. Look, LAFC looks like a juggernaut right now. I'm not, if I had to pick a favorite to win MLS Cup, frankly, LAFC probably is the team I would pick. But the Sounders are 1-1 against LAFC this year. They, I think if there's any, if they have Son and Bouanga hitting on all cylinders, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough no matter what. There was nothing the Sounders could do to make me necessarily feel better about that matchup. Could they get past them? Sure. And then honestly, there's no one in the East who I feel like is heads and shoulders above the Sounders. I will take my chances against anyone. LAFC is honestly the team I am most worried about facing. They look like they are, like I said, they look like absolute juggernauts right now. They are a huge problem. But look, if you want to tell me that the Sounders play LAFC in the Western Conference Finals, and I'll take that. I would consider that a successful. If they can get to the Western Conference Finals, I will be very satisfied, and I have no complaints. But so yeah, it's an uphill battle. I'm not going to sit here and say Sounders are favorites or even second or third favorites to win MLS Cup, because I think that's a really tough path to get through if they have to face LAFC. But I'm also not going to sit here and say they'd have no hope. I think this is a good offense. I think that they've shown that they are capable of putting together a good defensive run. They were very good defensively in the Leagues Cup. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I feel, bringing it back to the beginning part of like the matchups and everything, I'm not scared of Minnesota. I'm not, the teams that I'm scared of, quote unquote, or that I think are real contenders, it's San Diego, it's the Whitecaps, and it's LAFC. And if I'm ranking them in order, it's LAFC, San Diego Whitecaps, like 2A, 2B. Both of those teams I do think are beatable, especially if the Sounders can play like they did in Leagues Cup. If they can play like they did in Leagues Cup, that level, I don't know who can beat them. I really don't. That's the truth. And they were doing that with effectively a B and a C squad. So you're getting Jordan Morris healthy. You're getting your attack. More players will be back. Yamar, yes, maybe he misses potentially a match in the first round or so, like that. I'm not too worried about. I'm going to say it here. I'm going to just be optimistic. And I haven't been super optimistic until today, until right this second, Jeremiah.
I got you fired up.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible that they at least make MLS Cup. It's going to come down to if they have to play LAFC or not. I really believe that. For all of my money, if I was going to pick a winner of who is the hottest in the league right now, who looks just unstoppable, it's LAFC. That's the truth. The amount of goals that they're scoring, it's basically doing what the Sounders were able to do. And that's lethal. That's lethal. So can those two ideologies coexist? Can they play each other, and who comes out on top? Like, I don't know. Maybe Jordan Morris is better than Heung-min Son. We don't know.
Maybe
he is. Maybe Jesus Ferreira is better than Denny Musovski. We don't know.
Maybe.
And the playoffs are a weird, funky, freaky thing where a lot can happen. And sometimes the best team doesn't win. Sometimes you go down to LAFC in the playoffs in a team that looks just as good as the one they have now, and you beat them and you upset them. And that's just
sometimes you set a MLS points record and you lose in the first round to the worst team in the division
ever.
Right. So these are things that happen in the playoffs. So again, I'm not going to sit here and try to talk anyone into believing that the Sounders are favorites or that I, in my heart of hearts, believe that they are going to win MLS Cup. But are they capable of putting together a run? Absolutely. And I will note, we had a fun little hangout with your boys from Happy Foot, Sad Foot over the weekend. And what they told me was, look, I don't want any piece of the Sounders. I'm horrified of having to play the Sounders in the playoffs. And I think that there's something that we should take to heart about that, because no one wants to play the Sounders. Like the Sounders, as much as we look at LAFC as the big bads, or we used to look at the Galaxy or whatever, I think the reality is that the Sounders, for a lot of fans, are sort of the big bads. Like we are always right there. We're always competitive. It's even when the season seems to be falling away, we find a way to get into the playoffs and put together a competitive run. And I think that's very scary to a lot of fans. And so, own that.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. Do not count out a Brian Schmetzer playoff run. Do not count out the Seattle Sounders in the playoffs. It's a different level. It's a different team. And like I said, I think the rebound from this hangover has been quicker than anything I've ever seen. Yeah, they dropped 2 games that was bad. Miami and Galaxy, that was a little bit of a punch in the gut. But honestly, these last few, Austin and Vancouver, they didn't make me concerned. They were just like, shit, I would have really liked to win those games, but okay, we keep it pushing. And we're going to take where we're at, and we're going to take the cards that we're dealt. There was a lot of people saying at the beginning of Leagues Cup, one, that it was a cash grab, money grab bullshit tournament. We got your ass on that. We told you it wasn't. Number 2, they were saying, there's no way that the Sounders make it out of this. They've got to win 3 games. They've got to beat the champion of CONCACAF, who absolutely handed it to them earlier in the season. They've got to beat a team that is basically going to rat ball them. And it's just hard. It was too hard. It was not possible. They didn't think that it could happen. And guess what they did? They went out there and they created a moment of magic. And so I don't think that we should ever count out the Sounders in the playoffs, because they're just good at creating those moments of magic in those moments. That's why Brian Schmetzer is the head coach of this team. I mean, frankly, that's just the truth. Like, look what he did in 2016 with way less.
Right. No, and he's probably the greatest tournament coach in MLS history.
Hands down. I think that's a good place for us to jump into our second ad break. We will be back after talking about the finalists for the Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends. I think I said it right this time. And slandering FIFA. We'll be right back. Want to go deeper with Lobbing Scorchers? Scratch under the surface. Get down even dirtier than we already get. Become a YouTube member. Sometimes things just get a little too spicy, a little too weird, and a little too loose for the general public. And the people to see that are YouTube members. We're talking about exclusive bonus videos, the podcast after show, exclusive written content, and little bits and pieces of information before the unwashed masses know about it. As a member, you not only get access to all of this amazing content, you get a badge next to your name and a slew of amazing emotes to use, not only in our live stream chat, but also in our comment section. And yes, we do have an emote for Jesus Ferreira, Go Snack, and Paul Rothrock. This is the best way to help keep us independent and keep us building out this crazy YouTube brand that we call Lobbing Scorchers. Hit the join button down below or hit the link in the top of our description if you're on mobile to join the ranks and become a Lobbing Scorchers YouTube member. Welcome back. Thank you for not skipping our ads. Again, like Jeremiah said, we will be sending you 800 emails a day. invoicing you if you did skip. Also, I'm going to come to your house and just weep on your doorstep for days if you did that. So
we need those CPMs.
We need your 5 cents, man. It helps us, okay? We're for the culture or something, or I don't.
Are we allowed to say if you are a subscriber, you can also subscribe to an ad-free version of
That's true.
So like do that.
So yeah, do that. Sounders.com/LS. And then it's like, then you don't have to feel bad. Like you should feel guilty if you skip our ads. That's all I'm trying to say. The Sounders have announced 3 finalists for the Eternal Sounders Circle of Legends. Last year, they did the same thing. And people were like, oh my God, they're going to put up a name in Lumen Field forever. Whoa, they're going to hang a name in the rafters. That didn't quite happen, but there is a cool little LED board with a spinning little globe Sounders module. And last year, they honored the 1974 Sounders team. Was that correct?
The 1974 Sounders, correct. The inaugural team.
I don't really know how the voting went for that, but this year
there was no voting. They just
there was no voting.
They just sort of the first year they just sort of appointed a inaugural like entry, and then they sort of announced the criteria for future inductees. And yeah, it was kind of like, just to remind people of what happened is when they unveiled this thing, they had these, we had this idea that it was going to be this like pretty bold signage and it was going to look pretty dope. And then they opened it up and it was just like a banner that was hanging over the ad board. And I was like, oh, that's probably temporary, right? And then I start asking around and people are like, no, I think that's kind of what we did. This is not what we had in mind. And there was a fair amount of embarrassment over that. And then so the compromise was that they put it on this LED board. And I believe that they are still trying to get some permanent signage affixed to the stadium. And I'm sure that the struggle is that Lumen Field doesn't want any permanent signage out. Although the Sounders do have permanent signage in the rafters, all their MLS Cups and CONCACAF Champions League and all that stuff are up in the rafters.
Way more than the Seahawks.
Way more, certainly bigger titles than the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And although the Super Bowl title is still the biggest sign up there, but it's permanent signage. And I think that's what the Sounders wanted, is they wanted something that was permanent, that was eternal, if you pardon the pun, and really sort of like, and that looks nice. And it's not quite what anyone envisioned right now. I think it's better than what it started off as. It's definitely not as good as it could be. But yes, this is the first class of what they call ballot. What do they call it?
Ballot class.
The first ballot class. Exactly. Class. So this is the first time people are going to be able to vote for it. And it's a little confusing the way the vote is to get in. We should here. Why don't you tell the listeners who got nominated?
Who got nominated this year was Casey Keller, Siggy Schmidt, and Jimmy Gabriel.
Right. All 3 bona fide legends. A good place to start, I think, so essentially the way this works, as I understand it, is there's a nominating committee that's made up of, former, I think some staff and some, there's like 6 or 7 people, someone from Washington Legends of Soccer, a few other people, and they assemble basically a list of candidates that can be as many as 4 people. And then they put that to the fans, to the entire voting group. And then each group has a weighted value. So there's media, there's staff, there's ownership, there is former players, there is fans, and they all have their own weight. And to get in, you need to get 75% of the weighted vote, which is actually not the highest bar, frankly. Although I guess it's, it'll be interesting right now. It's gonna, like, all 3 of these people I think are gonna get in, no question. And I would imagine the next class will probably be a similar quality of, well, of course this guy belongs in there, and of course that person belongs in here. And we'll go through a few years where it's really obvious that these people belong in there. And then in 4 or 5 years, we'll start getting into, okay, these people deserve some consideration. And then as players start retiring, we'll have to, I guess you have to wait 3 years until you've retired, although there's some exceptions. So it'll be interesting. But for now, I think all three of these people are going to get in easy. Casey Keller is probably the most decorated soccer player to ever come from the Seattle region. He grew up in Olympia. He played for 4 World Cup teams. He has over 500 appearances for in Europe. And then, of course, he finished his career with the Sounders, where he was a 3-year captain. He led them to the U.S. Open Cup 3 times, or the 3 titles. And then he won Goalkeeper of the Year in 2011, his final season. And then he was a coach for a little while with the United States. And then, honestly, most Sounders fans probably remember him for being the commentator that was the color commentator for like 10 years.
That was very highly critical of the Sounders at all times, famously.
He was pretty critical of the Sounders, and I think I actually didn't mind his commentary. I thought he actually provided some genuine insight, even if it was a little negative at times. Like, he just never got excited about a goal. Like, it was every time the Sounders scored, it was like, well, this is
well,
what
they could have done it like this. And I'm like, buddy,
or there was like a defensive, right? Or it was usually some kind of defensive mistake that he always wanted to point out. But I thought he was insightful, and I liked him. And it'll be good to see him sort of back in the Sounders fold a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Casey a lot. I thought it's undeniable. I mean, he's a local legend. He's an he's a U.S. men's national team legend. I'm sure that all of the 14-year-olds that are basically the only people following that team right now don't know who he is. But let me tell you, if you're listening to this show, which you're probably not, and you're a part of the Bot Brigade, look him up. Watch some film. Good guy. Good at soccer.
Yeah, and he was an amazing. I mean, at one point, he was considered maybe the best goalkeeper in the world, and that's not even hyperbolic. It was real. He was an amazing goalkeeper. Siggy Schmidt, I'd like to think Sounders fans still remember. He obviously left in 200. He was fired in 2016. But in his 7 full seasons, he led the Sounders to the playoffs every year. He had a really good record. They won 4 Open Cups while he was here. He won a Supporter Shield while he was here. And then he also just had an amazing career beyond that. He also, he won 4 College Cups. He won 2 MLS Cups, sorry. He led 2 different teams to a Supporter Shield MLS Cup double. I don't know that there's any other coaches who have done that twice. Certainly not with 2 different teams. Really an absolute legend. And unfortunately, he passed away far too early. He had a lot left to give, I think, to the sport of soccer. And so that's kind of a bummer. But Siggy Schmidt, the coaching award is named after him. And then Jimmy Gabriel is someone who I would understand if Sounders fans are not quite as familiar with. He was a player in the NASL era. He was actually a player coach for a few years for the NASL Sounders. But really his main contribution to the Sounders was sort of a soft contribution. He's nominated as what's called a builder. And the reason for that is because as just a player and just as a coach, I don't think he would necessarily be getting this honor. But he was a real constant especially during the sort of like the lost era between the end of the NASL and the beginning of the A-League Sounders. There was about 10 years in there, and he was instrumental in helping bridge that gap where he was the coach of FC Seattle, which also is known as Seattle Storm, which played in a few different leagues. And he coached some absolute legends during that time. And he was really instrumental in sort of keeping soccer alive. And then he was an assistant with the A-League Sounders up until 2005, and he helped lead them to a title. He was also really instrumental in Brian Schmetzer references Jimmy Gabriel all the time. He was really an instrumental part of a lot of older Sounders sort of experience. And he passed away a couple years ago as well, but someone whose DNA is really all throughout the Sounders organization.
And would be the first double inductee, because technically he is already inducted into this.
You're right.
So
good catch.
That is the one interesting piece about it. But I guess we get to vote. I don't know.
Yeah, media members get a vote. Alliance members too.
I didn't know. I didn't get a ballot yet, but we'll see.
It hasn't gone out yet.
Okay. Okay, I'll check the spam folder at some point.
Exactly.
But I wanted to ask, I guess, one, I want to jump back just a tiny bit. Actually, no, let's hit this first, and then I'll jump back to hating on first and goal. Let's talk a little bit about what this means, kind of generally, and all of these people. We hit on who they are. I mean, personally, like, yeah, I'm gonna be voting for every single one of these people. I think they all easily deserve to get in. Like, if you are a Sounders fan, or you even generally know something about the Sounders, like, all of these people have crossed your mind. That's cool that they're doing 3 though. And like, what do you think about this whole program? Do you think that it's kind of like a little bit, I don't know, I guess I'm a little like, that seems like a lot of people are getting inducted, because I feel like usually it's only like one person who gets inducted every year.
Well, I think because it's early on, you sort of want to stalk it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if I don't know how the Seahawks did their Ring of Honor, I don't know if it was just one at a time. I don't know the process. I will say I like that it's sort of a democratic process, that it does. I think a lot of times the whole Sounders democracy in sports thing gets understandably sort of like written off as more of a gimmick, but it's stuff like this that gives it some value, and it gives it some legitimacy. And so anytime you can come up with a program like this that feels like it has some genuine value, that's great. And I think this program has a lot of potential. Early on, it is sort of about populating it with the obvious names. Maybe like, because they can nominate as many as 4, I guess, and theoretically all 4 could get in. So it could be, for the first few years, this could be really rapid, where it goes from 1 to 12 almost overnight. And I suppose at that point it would maybe start to lose a little bit of its shine. But the Jimmy Gabriel one, I think, is going to be an interesting test of this program, because I think he belongs in there, and I think it really will get to how much people understand the importance of these players, because I don't know how many NASL era guys are going to ultimately get in. Probably not very many. It's going to be obviously the 74 team, and then Jimmy Gabriel, and I don't know who else will get in. I'm sure others will be nominated, but there aren't as many obvious folks in that. At some point, you figure, there's going to I would imagine a lot of MLS players are going to end up getting nominated, because that's when, I would think maybe like a Zach Scott is maybe in the next pool. I would hope I would imagine maybe a Marcus Hahnemann is in the next pool, which it wasn't just because of
Chad
his,
Marshall.
Chad Marshall would be another good candidate. So it'll be interesting to see what the next crop of players looks like, because they did a good job of sort of like spreading it out and getting like one from each category into this thing. And so that'll be, I'll be very interested to see how the program comes out. And I do think on some level they need to figure out how to get Lumen Field to put up some permanent signage, because I think that's what really makes it valuable, and what gives it weight, is when you can have this permanent display inside the stadium that is seen by, honestly, that's not just by Sounders fans, but by Seahawks fans and by every other event that goes in there.
Monster
And that's
truck. Monster truck
exactly
viewers.
Exactly. Beyonce concert goers.
Yes. Ed Sheeran's looking up in the rafters going, Jimmy Gabriel. Who's that?
Wow.
I'm going to look him up.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch some film.
Exactly.
Schmidt, I'm going to watch some film. Let me learn something about UCLA Bruins soccer. Let me learn something about that.
Right. Exactly.
It seems, I like it a lot. I hate the fact that it's, I guess what I really take from it is truly the importance of the culture that the Sounders have built. We've talked about it, and I think we both are very much in agreement that the Sounders are one of the few clubs in MLS that can truly point to their history and have a through line of culture to their modern day iteration. And
I think that the only honestly, they're the only, like, I don't want to, I'm not trying to slag off the Timbers and the Whitecaps and the Earthquakes, I suppose, are the other team that can kind of theoretically draw their history back. But the reality, this is just cold hard facts. The things that link the current versions of those teams to their NASL, all the way back to their NASL era, are just so much more tenuous. I'm not saying they don't count. I'm not saying that they don't matter. They matter, but they are just not the same. There's not the same level of through line. It is like it's very easy. And frankly, Brian Schmetzer is the perfect avatar for doing that. But there's more than that. You can kind of go throughout the Sounders organization and see the links to the old versions of the team, the previous versions of the team. And it's unique in North American sports, and certainly in North American soccer. And I know that there are folks, especially in Columbus, who want to act like the Sounders are nothing more than an expansion team from 2009. But that's come on, what are we doing here?
You can pretend that, and like even if you want to claim that, that's cool. Like that, I don't think that that's a big deal to me personally, the perception of it, because at the end of the day, if it's not the same organization, cool, but there's so many threads that have been pulled in a legitimate way, not just in a like, here's our crest and this ball represents the one time that a soccer ball was kicked into our glue factory and burned down the entire town. It's like, no, like the head coach of the Seattle Sounders has been a Seattle Sounder since he was in high school.
Right, exactly.
Like that there's that. There has been someone who has been a part of all of that throughout every era. There have been players who were like, I love this city and this team and this culture so much that let me bridge the gap. Let me keep this together in some way because there is value here. And the way that they recruit, the way that they play players, like I will be the second that Paul Rothrock becomes eligible, I'm going to buy billboards. I'm buying billboards. He's getting in. That's, I don't know. That's really, to me, what it means. And I love that they have introduced this and are doing this. And to the First and Goal people, listen, I know you listen to the podcast. Okay. I know we're big monster truck enthusiasts here. We're the number one monster truck podcast in the US. Let me tell you, if you don't give some goddamn permanent signage, I'm gonna give a call to our next future mayor, Katie Wilson, and I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna find a way for you to break that lease, buddy, because I bet you the city will manage it 10 times better than First and Goal. Your millions and millions and $1 million of parking from Mariners games, gone. Get ready to be impoverished, buddy. So put up those Circle of Legends signs, okay? That's my threat.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay? Don't make me call in the big dogs. Okay? I will lobby. I totally have that power. I don't. I do. I don't. From one nightmare of an organization to another, this time with, I actually don't know if they have a monster truck. A FIFA monster truck would be cool, but FIFA, Jeremiah, they are an organization that exists, that doesn't like me particularly very well, unfortunately, and runs the World Cup, which will potentially be happening in Seattle. Not sure if it will be or not because of certain threats from certain presidents, and also who knows? It's I don't even know what's going on day to day anymore. But FIFA said we got to sell tickets to this event, and it's been a nightmare. The Athletic wrote a very, very, very in-depth article talking about just how insane it is to try and buy tickets to this game, regardless of how much you want to pay, which the prices are ridiculous too. It has been an absolute nightmare for anyone trying to buy. You got to sign up for an email and get a date. And then you might, like on that day, you got to log in and click a button. And then that'll send you another email, which then you'll get a window of 10 minutes texted to you at 4 a.m. On a random Tuesday that you'll be able to then purchase, but also it may not actually let you purchase because there's other people in the queue. What's going on, Jeremiah? What is happening with all of this? And how do we fix this?
Yeah, so there's two things going on here. One of them is there's a very maybe not complicated, but convoluted path to getting tickets right now, and this is still the first phase of ticketing, where you effectively had to sign up for a lottery, and if you were one of the folks that get selected for this lottery, then you get a window to buy tickets in, and that's itself sort of a complicating thing. And that lottery is currently ongoing. People started getting notified, I believe, on Monday, if they were selected, and then they're going to keep adding more people to the lottery as people buy tickets. And because there's only 1 million there's about 4 million total tickets to the World Cup. There's about 1 million tickets that are being sold during this window. And so they're basically rolling it out and seeing how many tickets get sold in each one. And then they're just going to keep rolling it out until they sell these first 1 million tickets. Okay, whatever. That's annoying. It's frustrating. We're still a long ways off, but whatever. You get it, you get in, but at least you're getting a good price. Well, I'll tell you, the good price, the face value of these tickets is outrageous. So one of the things that came out in this report from The Athletic was they got the ticket prices for a lot of these games. Now, not all of them. They were basically just sent information by fans who got through, and it's crazy. For the game, for the U.S. game that's going to be played in Seattle. Right now, the tickets are, let's see, I'm looking for this. So the game in Seattle, which is on June 19th, category 1. And this is the other thing. You don't buy specific tickets. You buy a category of tickets.
Of course.
So right. Because it would be too simple.
Yeah,
category 1, it looks like, is basically the entire lower section and then parts of the club section, I believe, is how it works out. Category 1 is $535. Category 2, which I guess is some of the tickets, some like the next level up, $405. And then category 3, which I'm assuming are on the third deck. There was also a category 4 ticket, but they weren't available by the time anyone got in. So the category 3, you're looking at a get-in price of $185. Okay, that is all. Those are expensive. $185 just to get in to see the U.S. But what's even crazier is that if you want to go see the U.S. season opener or the U.S. World Cup opener, they're starting at $1,100 for this game at SoFi. $1,100, the face value of their first World Cup game, $1,100.
And you have to watch the U.S. men's national team?
And you have to watch the U.S. men's national team on top of that.
Like, no disrespect. We love our boys in red, white, and blue. But I'm paying $1,100 to see them. What? Like, what? That's insane. And you know what? Insane. This is actually interesting to me. What this ticketing says is that they know what the demand is in Seattle from the Club World Cup, and they took that to heart. Because I think
because it's better. You're saying it's cheaper tickets.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, right, the opener,
right,
the get-in price is 10 times more for the opener in Southern California than it is in Seattle.
And it's more, the third game is also more, which is also in Southern California.
The third game is
about 50% more.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's an extra $100. That's insane. There's no, like, what are they doing? Did they not learn anything from the Club World Cup? I mean, they legitimately were throwing tickets at people towards the end of that tournament. They were like, "Please come to our games." Are they just gouging like the biggest supporters, and then they're going to drop the prices? Are they going to do the same thing that they did last time, you think?
I don't know. It's going to be, I mean, for the final, the get-in price for the final is $2,000.
Almost $3,000. 2.7.
No, for the category 4 tickets were $2,000. Apparently already sold out. I don't know if they're sold out, but they weren't available.
Yes.
And the category 1 tickets are $6,700. Let's keep in mind, this is not for necessarily premium seats. This is just somewhere in category 1. No guarantee at all of where your tickets are going to be.
I don't even have words, Jeremiah. I don't have words. I'm trying to look up what in 2018 what the final price was, because I guess it was like in 2018, it was between $455 and $1,000. But between the categories.
For the final?
For the final.
Yeah.
Even if you adjust that for inflation, that is not $2,000. I don't think. I don't think our economy is that bad. It's bad. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, that's ridiculous. And you have to be in New Jersey. You have to be at MetLife. Let me talk about one of the worst stadiums in the goddamn country, MetLife. Getting to MetLife impossible. Watching a game at MetLife sucks. Terrible field. Terrible place to be. That's awful. That's awful.
What? It's bad. Yeah, I suppose these tickets, it'll be interesting to see how these tickets sell. Because I'll say right now, if I were to get into the lottery, I guess I'm sure there's some cheaper tickets available. Like, I don't know if I would buy the US tickets or not. But that's brutal.
And then, yeah, the whole, I guess you were going to talk about the second thing potentially about just even getting in line to get the tickets.
Oh, well, the other thing that's kind of going on here that hasn't gotten quite as much attention is that there is these right to buy passes that you could buy, where it was basically like a NFT that was supposed to give you early access.
Grifting too.
Yeah, there was an NFT that was supposed to give you early access, but it's been really spotty, and there's been a lot of complaints about what the early because it's like you pay this big upfront cost just to get access to buy tickets, and then you actually have to buy the tickets, and the tickets are so inflated that people are just like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And apparently the NFTs have been selling really well in Mexico is where they've sold the best. And people are freaking out about how much they're now having to pay for actual tickets.
Well, and I saw that like the tickets in Mexico and Canada are cheaper. Like the get-in price is much, much cheaper. And they seem to be like actually in line with what the average person would be able to pay to get into these games. And I guess this all begs the question that we've all known for a long time, that the World Cup is no longer a celebration of football. It's no longer a celebration of soccer. It's no longer a way to bring the world together. It's a way to sell Coca-Cola sponsorships and to make as much money as physically possible on tickets. And that sucks. That really, really sucks.
Well, and one of the other things that's kind of a bummer, and this is another thing that hasn't gotten quite as much coverage, is there's a lot of concern from the cities over the fan fest that they were committing to, because apparently the agreement that cities sign is they're going to basically post up a fan fest every day of the tournament. And a lot of these cities and it was sold originally and you're going to be able to sell sponsorships and you'll be able to make your money back. Well, the thing is that you can't sell any sponsorships against what FIFA is already selling. So you can't go out and get your own beer sponsor because they've already sold, Budweiser or whatever as the sponsor. You can't go out and get all these categories of sponsors to sponsor your event. And then on top of that, they're saying you can't charge admission to these things. So all of a sudden, these fan fests are looking like big loss leaders for the city. And, on some level, you want these things to be free. But on the other level, most of these cities do not have tons of spare money just laying around to throw these fan fests, especially if there's no way to like monetize them. And I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. Like the whole endeavor is started. I remember I had this conversation with Ryan Rosenblatt way back when when the US first got this and when Seattle was getting picked, and he's like, I'm telling you, you do not want this. This is fool's gold. And I was like, God, Ryan, let us live, let us enjoy this. And this is exactly what he was talking about, is this kind of stuff where it's going to end up being, I don't doubt that once it gets here, it will put it all aside. It will be amazing, I hope. But there's going to be a lot of frustrations and a lot of annoyances, and it's not going to be really what we all envisioned, which is just like you said, like a celebration of soccer for a month. And instead, it's going to be sort of like much more of a celebration of capitalism.
Which, I think at the end of the day, like it does kind of, it's come to this point where now this is a hugely political event. This is a massively political
that's the
event
other
in
thing,
America.
right? Yeah.
And like people don't want to talk about it, but as okay, let's just shoot it straight here. The government is currently shut down. The federal government doesn't want to give anyone money. State governments are doing what they can to not go into deficits. They have been, in Washington state specifically, have been cutting back on funds towards important services so that fucking Seattle University can replace their field and get better locker rooms to host players. And is this really what we want at this point? Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's getting to the point where now cities are going to have to throw more money. If the city of Seattle has to throw more money when they're already cutting services,
right?
Throw more money into hosting a party because they can't get a beer sponsor. What are we doing? What are we doing? I love soccer. I love soccer more than anything. It's brought me the most joy and the most friendships, the most everything in my life. But it gets to a point, man, where it's like, I think Ryan might have been right. Like, this is a little bit of fool's gold and it sucks and I want it to be amazing and I'm going to experience it in whatever way I can experience and try and put this all aside when I get there. And I hate to end the episode on such a bummer, but like, that's just where I am, man. This all just feels like such a bummer.
It's the thing that's a bummer really is that ever since Seattle got announced as one of the host cities, there's been it's just been sort of like one gut punch after another. Like, I don't know if there's been really one piece of news that you're like, yeah, that's going to be dope. And don't get me wrong. I think there's potentially, it could still be cool. I think the fan fest should be fun. It'll be interesting. Don't get me wrong, but it's just, I don't blame anyone who's just like, I kind of would rather just Airbnb my house and get out of town for a few weeks.
If I had a house, I would do that. But Unfortunately, all of the houses are Airbnbs.
Sublet your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. That's it. Everyone, tap in. We're gonna start the Sound at Heart apartment sublet. That's how we're gonna grift, because apparently everyone else is grifting off the World Cup. Jeremiah, we're gonna have to find a way to capitalize on this really lucrative opportunity here. Huge. That I've so been told by 7,000 media moguls. But I think we can leave it there for today. I think that was great. I think, there was a lot of ups, there was a lot of downs. We're ending it on a bummer, but you know what? Sometimes that's the way it is, folks. Jeremiah, where can people find you?
So I run a little website called Sounder at Heart. That's probably the easiest place to find me. I also do a little podcast called No Sarietes. That's another good place to find me. If you are a subscriber to this podcast's private RSS feed, you will notice that you have probably heard my voice before, and that's from I'm Jeremiah from No Sarietes. Hey, welcome.
That's the guy.
Welcome.
That's literally the guy. That's the guy. So yeah, follow him on Blue Sky. Follow him on. We got to get you on TikTok. Maybe you can start doing some dances or something. Yes. Yeah, all right. Exactly. Jeremiah's going to get on TikTok, but follow Lobbing Scorchers on TikTok. Follow Lobbing Scorchers on Instagram. Buy our hot sauce, LobbingScorchers.com/sauce. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Like the video, sub to the channel, rate us 5 stars. Send Ari a heartwarming note. I don't think he's injured, but I don't know where he is. So that's just where we're at. He's just gone. He's gone with the wind. So tell him in the comments that you miss him and you need him back. I hope this show wasn't too much of a shit show. And until next time, we out.